It's my great pleasure to introduce the National Chair of KPMG Australia, Alison. Alison comes originally from the UK and she is a blue blood. Let me explain that. Alison tells people that she is career KPMG. If she was ever cut, her blood would bleed the colour of the KPMG blue squares. Alison's come to Melbourne through, I think, one of the toughest jurisdictions for any professional services country in this country, from WA. And there's not a sector that she hasn't engaged with or interacted with: energy, mining, transport, consumer goods, financial services. She's done them all, and she is a woman who puts the M into STEM. Can you imagine what it must be like as an eminent auditor to have to audit a global bank? Well, she's done it. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, can I please introduce the National Chair of KPMG Australia, Alison.
Well, thanks very much, Gary. What an introduction. That's very kind of you. First, I should say I'm absolutely thrilled to host this event here today on behalf of the organisation. This is a very important topic for our organisation, and I'm incredibly passionate about all forms of diversity, and that was really the platform on when I stood when my partners elected me as chairman, and so I've made that absolutely my mission. So, as Gary said, I don't really have a STEM background. I did maths at school, obviously, but I did a business degree, became a chartered accountant, joined KPMG as a graduate in the UK, have been here ever since. So it's quite different from Katrina's journey, but of course within KPMG I've done an incredible variety of roles and had an amazing number of opportunities, and the most important and exciting opportunity for me is I never in my wildest dreams believed that I would one day, of course, lead an organisation with nearly 8,000 people, of whom at the graduate level we do have 50-50 men. At the partner level we are targeting and will get to target of 30% women very shortly, but that's very important to me. So M's probably a bit of a stretch for me, but very kind of you to make that link for me, Gary. But it's been important to me. But I am a business leader in a very large and complex business. I know it's not immediately obvious to people why KPMG, a consulting firm, might be passionate about STEM, but so let me just give you a few statistics. Out of that nearly 8,000 staff, over 300 of them are engineers. Over 50 of them are actuaries. We have doctors, nurses, physiotherapists. We have about 100 data scientists. We've got 2 wonderful PhD STEM ladies down the front who may chip into the organisation as well. One of them is a nuclear physicist, I think, and I'm embarrassed, I can't remember what the other PhD's done now, but all deeply STEM focused. So this is a really important topic for us, supporting women in STEM, because we want to get more people into STEM and more data scientists into STEM as well. We've talked a lot this afternoon about statistical underrepresentation of women in STEM. From our point of view, we don't want to talk anymore, we just want to get on with actions, and so we are very focused on what we can do as an organisation to nurture our female STEM talent, and to make sure that we get more of them. And of course, we've titled our panel today, "You Can't Be What You Can't See." You saw that from some of the information that Andrew put up there. So I'm delighted not just to have Ellie and Eloise in the audience wanting to talk to you later, but 3 very different ladies with me on stage wanting to talk about their journeys. They have had deep STEM university educations, and it's fascinating to just listen to how they've used STEM in their careers, either to pursue STEM opportunities or to use those amazing skills to help them succeed in very much broader business careers. But given that Chris asked me why I was called the chairman, and then Gary looked confused as well, I am just going to take 30 seconds to tell you. When I took on this role, of course, I was the first female to do it in our profession, and so everybody said, "What are you going to call yourself?" And I went and asked some linguists, and they told me that chairman, the man in chairman, is Latin for hand, and it means the person who's got the hand on the controls. So chairman is not a gendered term, it means the person in control. So I decided I wasn't going to change that and call myself a chairwoman. If people are offended by it, I answer to chairwoman. I answer to pretty much anything that's not rude, actually. But that is just for anyone who wants to know. You'll see most senior business leaders in ASX companies will call themselves chairman even if they are a woman, and just so you know, that's the background. Enough about me. Why don't I introduce our wonderful panel? We've got Millie here and Kristina and Jane. So I'm just going to get each of them to talk a little bit about their introduce themselves, and when we get on to some questions about their credentials and what they do at KPMG.
Awesome. Hi everyone, I'm Millie Keating. I'm a little bit different to Jane and Kristina. I'm more like Alison in the sense that I'm not core STEM, but STEM has been a key feature of my career and my studies over the last, say, 15 years. I did a lot of maths in uni as part of both of my degrees in business management, economics and finance. I did a lot of market research. At one point I thought I was going to be a market researcher. At another point I almost became a chartered financial analyst. There are numbers around me, but my career since uni went quite in a direction I wasn't expecting. I worked in industrial manufacturing and I spent a lot of time in warehouses and production facilities, and I think that's where I realised how beneficial it is to be curious in the things you do day to day. Then went on to the Department of Defence, where I supported major multi-million-dollar procurements of military equipment, working very much so with engineers and technical people. And then finally I found myself at KPMG, where I'm a leader in our defence and defence industry practice. And again, I continue to work with commercial and government clients in the defence sector, predominantly with engineers, dealing with technical issues and helping to solve some of those military problems.
Fantastic, thank you. Millie, Kristina, what about you? You had quite a different journey to that.
Yes, so my background is a mechanical engineer by trade, and actually came out of uni, went straight into the water industry. So I was working as an asset engineer in the water industry, in wastewater and water treatment plants around Melbourne. For probably the first 5 years of that, really site-based. So out there, I think one of my favourite roles during that time was I was an asset manager, working on a big power treatment plant, but it was fueled by biogas. So working with diesel technicians, electricians and operators to really design maintenance renewals programs for these 7 really big generators. It's a really great initiative. From there, went to managing operational teams, managing technicians and tradies mostly, into then more strategy, asset management, looking overarching asset industries, frameworks, and how you could impact organisations at a bit of a higher level, which was really exciting for me. And then developing those transferable skills, was able to move into the power industry before coming across to KPMG, which has been a really amazing opportunity. Working still in the water industry, but focusing on developing our capabilities in that sector as actually our engineering asset management water sector lead. So yeah, a bit of a transition, certainly not where I expected to end up 10 or so years ago.
Yeah, and before I pass to Jane, I do reflect when I met Kristina and we were talking about this session, I asked her about her early days because she went straight out to a water treatment plant. She told me a really fascinating story about her first day on the site and then how her boss became her best friend. Do you want to share that story, Millie? I just thought it was fun, and I'm sure something resonates with all of you.
Yeah, certainly. So young engineer, it's quite confronting going out. Most of the time I was the only female, probably except for the receptionist on site. So headed out, and I'd been sent out to support one of the managers. He was a really big guy, tradie background, a bit larger than life, earring,
Davidson.
rides a Harley, and he was really under-resourced. So I'd been sent out to help him, and I got to site, and I sort of, he threw me a couple of challenges, and I started sort of immersing myself in reading technical standards and manuals, and started to ask a few questions. And I'd been out for about 2 weeks, and then he, I guess, felt confident enough and felt like he probably respected me enough to tell me that he actually never really wanted me there. So he was now in a position to say, you know what, I didn't want a young engineer, I wanted somebody who was older, I wanted someone who had more experience, and I wanted someone who I thought could actually help me. I didn't think you could, but you know what, you're actually doing a pretty good job. And 10 or so years later, we're now really good mates. We're actually catching up for dinner tonight. So he's been a lifelong friend after that whole experience. And I think being curious, which Millie mentioned earlier, asking questions and being going with quite an open mindset meant that we could really bond over having some common problems to solve.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Jane, again, a very different story.
Yes, hi everyone. My name's Jane Wayland, and I'm currently a director in KPMG's Innovation, Digital and Data practice, which sounds awesome and is, but my journey has been quite circuitous and diverse. I started with my undergrad in chemistry and biochemistry, And I left at the end of my bachelor degree feeling quite out of place. It didn't feel like where I wanted to be in the future, going into the lab, and all of my friends went into the lab and they did their PhDs and their postdocs and they went overseas. And for a long time it confused me about where I should go next. I went and did the wandering around overseas for the year and ended up in the publishing industry, which was my passion for a long time. That meant that I qualified as an editor and language became a real passion for me. And that is what eventually led me to KPMG, where I like to tell everybody that I joined KPMG when they were hiring 10-year-olds, right? Because I've been here for 14 years. But in truth, I had a great experience working in publishing, but I can now see, with my experience here, I can see that there are strong themes around working in business transformation, organisational change, and now I've reconnected to my science background, exploring neuroscience. And for me, what I've enjoyed and what I now can reflect on was heightened when I recently did some work at the University of Melbourne. So I went back to my old school, and the science dean and head of their business function, they said to me, "You're one of us. Oh, we're really proud of you. Look at where you've ended up. Will you come and talk to some of our students?" And it was a revelation for me, because it made me realise I'm actually really proud of that background, and when I think about it properly, it has helped me in so many ways through my career.
Thank you.
Probably a bit more than an introduction there.
No. I mean, I think it's to me, it's really important to reflect on the deep STEM skills that people use and continue in their deep STEM journeys, but just to help get that message out to really young people that you don't get pigeonholed, because what I hear time and again is people won't do STEM jobs. They want to go and be lawyers or commerce graduates because that will give them a very broad range of opportunities, and they think STEM will put them into a really narrow band of what they might do. And that was why I wanted to share the depth of your stories and the variety of different places that you've all gone, and of course showcase the variety of different opportunities at KPMG, which of course is very important to us. We talked a bit about you can't be what you can't see. So all of you have had mentors, I think, during your career. Just wonder if one or two of you would like to reflect on your relationship with mentors, and then perhaps in turn how you think about how you're going to pay it forward in the way that we've all talked about this afternoon. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I've got quite a different mentor story to the one Kristina mentioned earlier. I've had a lot of mentors over my career, formal and informal relationships. But one of the most fascinating ones I did not expect, and I think my point is you could find a mentor in any situation. About 6 years ago, I was trekking Kokoda in Papua New Guinea. And so you meet everyone in plain clothes. You don't know what they do for a job. You don't know anything about them. And there was one gentleman who was on the same tour as me. And we found that for several days we would walk along and I would talk about my desire to leave the public service and go and be a financial analyst. He was in the financial services sector. And until day 3, I didn't know he was actually the CEO of a large financial services company. So I would talk to him about wanting to change and why, and he would coach me on that. And he would talk to me about the challenges he had in his workplace, retaining women, given particularly the culture, that women just didn't have the voice that the men had. And he was seeing that, particularly after having children, women would return for a short amount of time and then leave permanently. So we had this really great two-way relationship for a couple of weeks. And we caught up a few times when we both came back to Australia, and he actually helped me find some interviews and make a decision not to be a financial analyst. And then I came to KPMG. Yeah.
Fantastic. Did either of you want to share? You've really shared your mentor.
Yeah.
Sure. I have an absolute passion about mentoring. I think Millie particularly will be able to tell you that I've been going on about this for a long time. Firstly, if I hadn't reached out to some of the people who are quite senior at the firm early on in my career, I would have left KPMG after a couple of years, because I had figured out I had a great opportunity to go and work overseas. I worked in our global practice for a while, and I came back and I said, I don't know where I want to go from here. And I was really fortunate because I asked one of our partners at the time, I said, can you introduce me to someone who could help me? And he introduced me to a lady called Steph Bradley, who had just moved from Brisbane to Melbourne, and she was an associate director so not too senior yet in the firm. And she actually spent a series of coffee dates with me, going through a bit like What Colour is Your Parachute, if you've heard of that book. Like, what are you good at? What do you like? And she helped me figure out some options and indeed helped me transfer into the consulting practice. Steph is now one of our really highly driven, very senior people in the firm she's done that. That story could be told in a number of ways from a number of people. So for me, I've had that, and that was a sort of a really defining moment for me. But also I've had the opportunity to do KPMG's Bird Walton program, which is designed to help develop women leaders. And through that program, I learnt about the concept of the personal board. And I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but the idea is you treat yourself like a business. Think about what you might need to help your business grow. Identify some skills, have a think about who might be able to help you with that, approach those people, tell them you want them to fulfil that role for you, and it becomes quite an exciting thing for those people. And set a time limit, so I'd like you to work with me over the next 6 months and see how it goes for you and review and evaluate, and that way you can get some really interesting people involved in helping you develop.
Great. Just in the concept of you can't be what you can't see, it's interesting when Gary said I bleed blue blood. I've worked in this organisation for 35 years, and when I started there were almost no senior women. And so I was fortunate to obviously had some wonderful male mentors, but eventually what I realised was that I can learn from just about everyone because we've all got good strengths and weaknesses. And a couple of the people that didn't really know that they mentored me, and I thought of them as anti-mentors because there were a couple of those really men that used pervasive sexist language that put you down, that didn't let you voice, that I worked with, and I worked with a lot. And what I often used to do was pick up a problem and go and think about it and decide what I wanted to do, and then I would make a time to see them, and I would stroke their ego by saying, I really would value your input on this and help me think through. And I would get them to talk through their thinking on the issues, and I would bounce my thinking on it, and they always had a completely polar opposite view of me, and it was just a really good way of going through and getting them to explain it, and I would come out and go, yep, I've just reconfirmed they're idiots, but I've absolutely clarified why what I want to do is the right thing. And so I actually used those people, and they regarded themselves as my mentors. They didn't quite understand the way I was using them, but it was incredibly helpful to me and made me, I am a big believer in seeking diverse views and really helping challenge your thinking, and I do think that's partly why I'm so passionate about all forms of diversity, not just gender, but particularly gender, is that the power you get when you get a whole lot of different thinking and you pick the best of it and go forward. So, don't get too confronted if there aren't women role models for you and you're just going, I can't be what I can't see. That was a tool that was incredibly useful to me in using them. It stroked their egos, so they liked me, but it also really helped me develop my thinking and my just logical reasoning steps to just be able to explore those different things. So that was just a fun thing for those of you who can't find someone that you can't be what you can't see, but sometimes what you can see is you don't want to be that, and it helps you reinforce what you want to be instead as well. And that was something that I wanted to use. Given that we're now moving, we said we would be focused on actions. Really keen, Jane, you've talked about the Bird Walton program, but Kristina, we've got Women's STEM networks. Do you want to talk a bit more about that and how that's working for you?
Yeah, certainly. So I think there's been a lot of change recently. Even I've been at KPMG for a year and a half, and it's really evident, even just in the engineering asset management service line, how much change there's been in terms of more women coming on board, which has been great. So we've been able to set up a lean-in circle, which has been one thing, and we've also got a community of practice. And some of the things we're trying to do throughout that is connect women, but also really focus on how we're recruiting. I think there's been some really great efforts from some of the other female engineers in the team to connect in with universities and to start to actually flag KPMG as an employer of choice for young women, and we've spoken a little bit about that pipeline coming through. We actually had a really great experience recently, so I'm quite heavily involved in recruitment, really passionate about it, and particularly in trying to bring young women through. And so we were looking at vacation program, the candidates for that, so I had 10 video interviews, and myself and another engineer were reviewing it, so naturally we both completely independently came up with decision-making criteria, a number of different factors and an evaluation approach, and They were very, very similar, and we both, at the end of it, independently came across 4 top candidates, and 3 of them were actually female, which was something that I was incredibly surprised by, and it was quite a, it was a really nice moment, I think. So we ended up with 50-50 in the end, but
Great.
I think that slowly there are things that are changing in that space.
Fantastic. Okay. Did you want to share anything on this, Millie?
Oh, no, I think that's
You're happy
I
with that?
might chime in if that's okay,
Yeah.
Alice. Yeah, so we actually have in the audience today Els and Elodie, who are 2 of our colleagues who are really quite passionate about some of these initiatives. And it's been really great to hear about that as I've started working with you both, particularly diversity in data and thinking about AI and some of the activities that these ladies have been involved with. So if you have the opportunity to talk to them after this, I thoroughly recommend.
Fantastic. You can't poach them, Katrina. Did any of you want to ask any questions of me before we hand over to the audience? Shall I?
Oh, well, I always have one. Alison, one thing I think that's really important in considering being what you can see is thinking about the board level.
Yes.
And have you seen STEM skills evident, whether with women or men, in the board roles that you've seen around the country?
Yeah, so a large part of my job, I do have the privilege to go out and just talk to a wide range of board members, chairs, CEOs of organisations to just understand all of the issues that they're facing and, of course, the work that we're doing to help them. I'm quite fascinated and horrified by some things and really excited by others. I am horrified to hear women of boardrooms in ASX top 50 companies reflecting exactly what Andrew said, that their voices are not heard, that they're belittled, that they're talked over. And I'm more horrified when I say to them, well, how do you talk to the chairman about that? And they said, well, Alison, usually the chairman is the problem. So, you know, that is fascinating, and I do think what I always hear and see working well is as soon as you've got a bit of critical mass and you've got 2 or 3 women, that they really do work together, and in a good boardroom where this problem exists, you see a woman make a point and then the next woman will come in and say, as Katrina just said, I really agree with that, because otherwise, and I hear time and time again, sadly still, women say, I raise a point, everybody talks over me, half an hour later, a guy says the identical point, and it's like the light bulb moment. It's like, well, how did you think of that? And, you know, it's really disappointing to hear that still said. So I think just those tools, a bit to Katrina's point of always taking a sister with you, that the tools that you have to actually just recognise, reflect on, and use those skills to help each other all the time is something that I see in the boardroom as well. To your point, I think one of the other challenges I hear a lot about boards, and I mean everyone's got an opinion on boards and why you'd be a board member in today's environment when no one's good enough, I don't know, but you know, you often hear that women do the roles like the marketing, the head of HR, and that men do the serious roles, the line P&L roles and things. But the few women who are in STEM and have had engineering careers or IT careers or deep operational skills, when they are in the boardroom, they are valued and listened to. And so, you know, if you want to think about, is STEM a career for me? Is it credible? You have instant credibility in the boardroom when you have those things that are seen as traditional male skills suddenly become very valuable. So again, I think that's another good reason why you should reflect on STEM skills being there. And I think the other thing I wanted to reflect on in relation to boardrooms, when I became the chairman of the firm, it was, you know, I guess over my career, a bit like Katrina, you're used to going into more increasingly senior rooms where, again, it's mostly men. And of course, when you become the chairman and you go to forums that are for chairmen, again, you're quite often almost the only woman in the room. And it is, you know, there are lots of good men around, but there are lots of men who still are challenged. And it is interesting, I often reflect that a lot of them have learnt now that they need to behave as if they're listening, so they'll be polite. Nobody's overtly rude to me ever. They're often quite polite. You can see them going, little girl in a big boy's job in their eyes, but they'll listen. But what fascinates me is they'll listen to diverse opinions around the room, and then they'll speak as if their opinion is the fact. And they don't realise or understand that they're doing it. And I've really, I haven't quite learnt, like Katrina has, to have compassion for them. But what I have learnt, But neither, I'm working on it, Katrina. Perhaps you can give me some guidance. But neither do I get either sucked in or concerned or worried about it. And I look at them and I listen and I think that's okay. I know you think that's the fact, but actually today's society recognises just how important everyone's voice is. So I'm actually representing a lot of other people's voices. This is not me they're putting down. It's half of society they're putting down, and that half of society needs to be listened to. And I'm there for that half of society. So I actually just need to keep talking. So I don't get, I've got over the days of getting back in my box, feeling belittled, feeling I should shut up. Even when I encounter that behaviour, I go, okay, I get it. I know you think you're talking the facts, but you don't represent everyone. And I don't represent everyone either, but I represent a different voice, and we need different voices. So I do use that technique a lot to help me. And again, I think, you know, if you're looking for some tools to help you a bit, to Katrina's point of don't give a shit and why shouldn't you be afraid, you know, hopefully that'll give you some tools to think about that you are not just doing this for yourself, which you are entitled to, but you are doing it on behalf of everybody else who recognises and wants to be represented by difference. And I can see Gary thinks we're out of time.
Not
No? We are. Yes, we are. Yeah.
As we close down this session, as we welcome friends from the other breakout sessions, I guess, Alison, for me, the thing that resonated most was your use of some of the male colleagues as almost an anti-mentor or a reverse mentorship. And I think I've just worked out why so many women have come to my office over the years to seek my opinion on things. Ladies and gents, a really wonderful sharing out there session with Alison, with Millie, with Kristina and with Jane. I'd ask you to join me in thanking them very much for being so candid and sharing their